Russia's navy was anticipated to be one of its key advantages in the Ukraine war. The formidable Black Sea Fleet alone should have posed significant challenges for Ukraine's defenders. By achieving complete domination of the Black Sea, Russia could have leveraged its naval power to capture several critical territories, including Mariupol, Odessa, and Mykolaiv. This strategic advantage would have put Ukraine's southern regions in Russia's hands through bombardments from the sea, followed by the insertion of ground forces via the coast, forcing Ukraine to battle on both the southern and eastern fronts. However, this scenario has not materialized. Instead of being a decisive advantage, Russia's navy has proven to be largely ineffective in supporting its ground troops in Ukraine. So, the question arises, why is Russia's navy facing such serious challenges, not only in Ukraine but also for the foreseeable future? To answer this, it's essential to understand the supposed power of Russia's navy. Russia is fighting against a country with virtually no navy, which should have given it an overwhelming advantage. For an assessment of naval power, we turn to Global Firepower, GFP. Each year, GFP ranks 145 countries using over 60 data points to determine the most powerful military forces globally. As of 2024, Russia ranks second, with Ukraine at 18th. This disparity is significant, but it becomes even more pronounced when comparing the two countries' naval strengths. According to GFP, Russia is supposed to have the strongest navy in the world, or at least the largest, with 781 naval assets compared to Ukraine's 104. Russia boasts 65 submarines, the highest number globally, along with 14 destroyers, 12 frigates, and 83 corvettes. In stark contrast, Ukraine has none of these types of ships. Ukraine's navy primarily consists of patrol vessels and a handful of mine warfare ships, whereas Russia has 122 patrol vessels to Ukraine's 33 and 47 mine warfare ships to Ukraine's 3. The naval battle shouldn't even be a contest. Yet, Russia is not only failing to secure victory in the Black Sea but is also suffering significant losses. The fleet, comprising between 60 and 80 ships and 50,000 personnel, has been hit repeatedly by Ukrainian attacks. Ukraine claims to have incapacitated around a third of the fleet since February 2024. To grasp the impact of these strikes on Russia's naval strategy, it's crucial to examine each significant attack. First was the Moskva, a Slava-class guided missile cruiser, destroyed by Ukraine in April 2022 using a pair of Neptune missiles. These missiles, over 16 feet long and capable of carrying a 330-pound warhead, can be fired from land and travel up to 186 miles before hitting their target. This strategy highlights Ukraine's approach. Instead of engaging Russian warships with patrol boats, they use missiles fired from the coast. The sinking of the Moskva was a significant victory for Ukraine, as the ship carried 64 S-300 PMU Favorite surface-to-air missiles and a ZIF-122 retractable launcher capable of firing 9 M33M missiles. Russia attempted to downplay the loss, claiming the Moskva was damaged by a fire caused by the detonation of its own ammunition while firing on Ukraine, combined with stormy conditions in the Black Sea, leading to its sinking. This pattern of successful Ukrainian attacks on Russian naval assets has continued, severely hampering Russia's naval effectiveness and highlighting the challenges it faces in maintaining naval superiority. Understanding these dynamics is crucial for comprehending the broader strategic failures of Russia's navy in the Ukraine war. It wouldn't be long before Ukraine revealed that Russia's claims about the Moskva were false. In May 2022, Ukraine used Bayraktar drones made in Turkey and emblematic of Ukraine's resistance to destroy 3 Russian Raptor-class patrol boats and damage 2 more. While these boats lack the missile launching capabilities of the Slava class, they are high-speed vessels used for cutting off sabotage attempts and conducting search and rescue missions. With these vessels out of action, Ukraine managed to take out vital support ships in the Black Sea Fleet. The strikes continued. Around the same time, reports emerged that Ukraine had sunk the Tapir-class Saratov ship. This would have been another significant blow, as the Tapir-class is a massive landing vessel capable of transporting up to 1,000 tons of cargo, 313 to 440 troops, and around 50 vehicles to the Ukrainian coast. It also carries 24 SAM missiles and a 40-tube A215 Grad-M rocket artillery launcher with 160 rockets. Russia initially denied the sinking but finally admitted the loss in March 2023. Reports suggest Ukraine used a Soviet-era Taka-U ballistic missile to destroy the Saratov, marking a significant loss for Russia's capability to land troops in southern Ukraine. The losses didn't stop there. In May 2022, Ukraine destroyed a 02510 BK-16E assault boat, another support vessel designed for fire support during coastal landings and rescue and anti-sabotage missions. This was followed in June 2022 by the sinking of the Vasily Bek rescue tug, struck by a pair of Harpoon missiles, with the attack documented in a video. By the end of June, Ukraine had already sunk a major landing vessel, several support ships, and a missile cruiser. Ukraine's activity seemed to subside for a few months, but in October 2022, the Ivan Golubyts was damaged in an attack while docked in the Sevastopol port of Crimea. This attack involved 9 unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, and 7 maritime drones, essentially small ships used in kamikaze-style attacks on larger vessels. This evolving approach of using both aerial and water-based drones allowed Ukraine to attack Russia's ships without risking manpower. By this point, Russia had drastically reduced its operations in the Black Sea. Its feared fleet was barely present, meaning Ukraine had fewer targets but also that Russia couldn't use its fleet to apply pressure or establish a southern front in Ukraine. It would be nearly a year before Ukraine claimed another ship from the fleet. In September 2023, Ukraine used Bayraktar drones again to destroy a Project 640 patrol boat while it was unloading cargo. This attack was quickly followed by strikes on 3 more Russian landing ships, the Minsk, Olengorsky Gornyak, and an unnamed vessel. All 3 were Rapucha-class vessels capable of landing 500 tons of cargo and up to 340 soldiers on Ukraine's shores. The Olengorsky Gornyak and the unnamed vessel were damaged but salvageable, while the Minsk was so heavily damaged that repairing it would be uneconomical for Russia. A couple of months later, Ukraine took out more Russian landing vessels, destroying one Cerna-class small landing ship and heavily damaging another. November 2023 saw a strike against the Askold, a Karakut-class cruise missile cruiser capable of firing Kalibr and Onyx missiles, followed by the damaging of an Onditra-class landing craft using kamikaze drone boats. December brought the sinking of the Novocherkassk, another Rapucha-class landing ship with 77 sailors believed to be on board. In February 2024, Ukraine destroyed the Ivanovets, a Tarantul III-class corvette, with Magura V-5 naval drones. Who needs a traditional navy when unmanned vessels can effectively destroy enemy ships? And Ukraine has continued its assaults as we've progressed further into 2024. In February, Ukraine sank another Rapucha-class landing vessel, the Caesar Kunikov, using Magura V-5 drones. These same drones were responsible for sinking the large patrol boat Sergei Kotov a month later. March also saw Ukraine damage the Yamal and Azov, both Rapucha-class landing ships, in an attack while they were stationed in Sevastopol. An amphibious landing ship named the Konstantin Olshansky was also destroyed in a missile strike in March 2024. Finally, there's the Ivan Kurs. Launched in 2017, this ship is part of Russia's Project 18280 intelligence ship initiative and contains an MR-231-3 navigation radar that Russia would have used to track Ukraine's drones had the ship not been damaged in a missile attack in April 2024. So, where does all of this leave the Black Sea Fleet? Frankly, the fleet that was supposed to play such a pivotal role in the war has been rendered practically useless. Ukraine has done an excellent job of targeting the fleet's landing vessels, consistently lowering its ability to land troops in the south of Ukraine. It's also taken out several warships, including missile cruisers that could have battered the Ukrainian coast, along with a host of support vessels, making it even harder for Russia's navy to conduct operations in the Black Sea. Damaging the Ivan Kurs was another major coup. The less intelligence Russia can gather in the Black Sea, the worse its ability to handle Ukraine's constant drone and missile strikes becomes. Taking out a vessel that also had electronic warfare capabilities is just the icing on the cake. Tactically, Ukraine has clearly come out on top here. Drones and missiles have proven to be a worthy defense against a powerful Russian naval force. Still, some questions arise about Russia's navy in the wake of these attacks. The Black Sea Fleet has 80 vessels at most, with the number likely being closer to 60. The Russian navy has almost 750 assets to its name. Why doesn't it just send so many ships into the Black Sea that it overwhelms Ukraine's defenses through sheer numbers? After all, that's the approach it's taking on land, with Russia seemingly only gaining ground because it's able to quickly replace the hundreds of thousands of troops who have already been killed or injured in the war. Surely, the point of having such a large navy is to avoid situations where small contingents of ships can be picked off one by one. Russia would likely overwhelm Ukraine's naval defenses were it not for one significant obstacle, Turkey. Ever since the days of the Ottoman Empire, simple geography has given Turkey the most influence over the Black Sea. That's because the country oversees both the Dardanelles, which connect the Sea of Marmara to the Aegean Sea, and the Bosporus, which links the Sea of Marmara to the Black Sea. Collectively, these two passages are known as the Turkish Straits, and they're the only way for any ships to enter the Black Sea from the Mediterranean. For centuries, the Turkish Straits offered Turkey practically complete control over the Black Sea, essentially transforming the body of water into a Turkish lake. That started to change in the 20th century. Though Turkey still controlled its vital straits, increasing Soviet influence in the wake of the 1936 Montreux Convention resulted in an agreement that regulated the passage of ships into the Black Sea. The Soviet Union gained influence in the Black Sea, resulting in it placing pressure on Turkey to give up at least part of its ownership of the Turkish Strait. That pressure indirectly led to Turkey becoming one of the earliest members of NATO. It joined in 1952 with the addition of Romania and Bulgaria to that alliance in 2004, reinforcing Turkish control over passage into the Black Sea based on its ownership of the vital straits. Where does all of this leave the Russian Navy in the war against Ukraine? It's unable to replenish the Black Sea Fleet with new ships. As GI's reports, Turkey chose to close the Turkish Straits to the transit of military vessels that don't call the Black Sea their home base. So, the Black Sea Fleet could come and go as it pleased, though it was unlikely to leave given that it was fighting Ukraine. But any other Russian ships weren't allowed through under Article 19 of the Montreux Convention. Turkey can even claim neutrality here, as it has disallowed passage for all military vessels, not just Russian ships. As one senior American official puts it, Turkey's move is a very important contribution to Ukraine's security, due to it essentially suspending naval traffic in and out of the sea. The move also presents other problems to Russia. Not only can it not supplement the Black Sea Fleet with other ships, but it also can't get the ships it has stationed in the Black Sea back out again. There is no escape. Those ships, which have already proven ineffectual in the war, are sitting ducks that could become the victims of Ukrainian missile and drone strikes should they venture out too far into the Black Sea. Russia's navy is in a catch-22 situation. As GI's notes, Russia could attempt to apply pressure on Turkey to open up the Turkish Straits to military vessels again. But if that happens, the benefits that come from bolstering the Black Sea Fleet could be cancelled out by the move, also allowing NATO, Ukraine's allies, and Ukraine itself to send ships into the sea. It's not too far of a stretch to think that one of Ukraine's many allies would consider donating ships to its navy so that it could establish a stronger presence in the Black Sea if the Turkish Straits opened up again. Far more likely is that Turkey will simply keep the straits closed, reinforcing its control over the Black Sea while ensuring that Russia's navy can't strike Ukraine. Still, maybe Russia has other options. For instance, the Baltic Sea could offer a route into Ukraine. After all, the Russian port in Kaliningrad opens out into the sea, and Russia maintains a Baltic fleet that's around 43 ships strong. However, just like the many Russian ships that can't get into the Black Sea, the Baltic fleet is essentially isolated from the fighting. That's because the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad is surrounded by Ukrainian allies, Poland to the south and Lithuania to the east. Neither is willing to allow Russia to transport troops via the Baltic Sea into Ukraine or, more importantly, into Belarus via the Suwalki Gap. The breakout of war has essentially seen that gap which offers passage from the Baltic Sea into Belarus shut down entirely. This is important because Belarus is a Russian ally and has already been used by Moscow as a launching point for its ground invasion of Ukraine. Now, it can't access that friendly state via the Baltic Sea, essentially making the Baltic Fleet useless. The situation is so bad that Russia's navy has essentially given up on the idea of using the Baltic Fleet to put pressure on Ukraine. As Foreign Policy reported in September 2022, several defense officials claim that Russia has basically pulled personnel from that fleet to send them into Ukraine as ground forces. The Baltic Fleet itself essentially sits dormant. By this point, you can see why the Russian Navy is in serious trouble in terms of the war in Ukraine. The Baltic Fleet is so useless to Russia against Ukraine that it's pulling sailors out of ships to have them serve on the ground. As for the Black Sea Fleet, which was supposed to dominate the body of water in which it was stationed while giving Russia the ability to land soldiers and conduct missile strikes, it's getting whittled away by the month. A third of that fleet is already destroyed or damaged. It can't be reinforced due to Turkey's control over the Turkish Straits, and it also can't escape the Black Sea due to those straits being closed to military vessels in both directions. Russia also appears to have miscalculated strategically. It didn't expect drone and missile strikes from Ukraine to devastate its ships, likely because Russia believed it would win the war in short order. All of this explains why Russia's navy is in serious trouble in a specific situation. But what about the future? Unfortunately for Russia, the future looks almost as grim as the situation in which it finds itself in the Black Sea. That may seem a strange claim to make given that Russia has very publicly proclaimed that it's going to be strengthening its navy in 2024. This year, it plans to receive 12 new warships alongside a fleet of 38 smaller craft. By all accounts, Russia's already large navy is growing. The 12 new warships are 10 more than it received in 2023 and around double the amount it built per year on average during the 2010s. But there's a problem. More doesn't mean better with these warships, as the British newspaper The Telegraph reports. In June 2024, it pointed out that barring its construction of submarines, the new vessels entering the Russian Navy are both lighter and less well armed than the ones that came before. Worse yet, those smaller vessels may not even be reliable. That's because Ukraine was the main supplier of maritime engines to Russia before Russian President Vladimir Putin decided to launch his special military operation. With that supply naturally being cut off, Russia has been forced to resort to cobbling together engines on its own, with those engines barely being powerful enough to propel the smaller ships that it's building. In other words, Russia is trading quality for quantity. While that may not be the worst approach in the world when it comes to a navy, especially as the largest navy is traditionally the one that wins in maritime battles, it's building higher quantities of smaller ships. That's a problem when it comes to tonnage, which is a measure of the amount of water a navy displaces. Generally speaking, the larger the tonnage, the larger and more powerful the ships, meaning a navy can have fewer ships than an enemy but still have the advantage because of its high tonnage. The U.S. Navy offers a perfect example of this. In terms of naval assets, the U.S. has 472, making it the fourth largest navy in the world when it comes to simple ship numbers. That places it behind Russia, which is first for assets, and China, which comes second with 730 assets. However, the U.S. Navy is considered far stronger than China's because its ships displace a total of 3.6 million tons of water compared to just 2 million for the Chinese Navy. Higher tonnage means bigger ships, which means larger crews, more weapons, and greater protection against enemy missiles. Russia's navy fares even worse. In 2019, its massive navy only displaced 1.21 million tons, less than a seventh of the U.S. Navy. Part of that comes down to its focus on submarines ahead of surface ships, though the U.S. practically matches Russia in that department. More tellingly, Russia clearly prefers to build smaller surface ships so that it has more assets at sea, only those assets don't come close to matching the power of its rivals. We've seen the impact of this approach in Ukraine. Many of Ukraine's missile and drone strikes against Russian warships and landing vessels have worked so well because those ships are susceptible due to their size. Having more ships doesn't mean much if they can't stand up to attacks. An article from the Jamestown Foundation in March 2023 highlights that Russia's strategic approach to shipbuilding is flawed. Instead of focusing on powerful vessels, Russia is emphasizing submarines and small ships intended to project power rather than wield it effectively. The Russian Navy spreads itself too thin with numerous construction projects, leading to significant delays due to material shortages, exacerbated by Western sanctions. The state-owned United Shipbuilding Corporation reported $5.55 billion in revenue for 2022 but still posted a loss of several $100 million. This is because it's working on many different ships simultaneously, all experiencing construction delays due to a lack of access to necessary materials. This illustrates the impact of Western sanctions on Russia's navy. All of this adds up to a navy that is failing to increase its power, even though it's receiving more ships. These new warships are smaller and less powerful than those being lost. So, even as the Russian navy grows in numbers, assuming it does, given Ukraine's effective tactics in the Black Sea, it will still emerge from the Ukraine war weaker than when it entered. This trend will continue, especially in comparison to the US and its NATO rivals, if Russia maintains its current course. Another significant issue weakening Russia's navy is corruption. Action on Armed Violence, AOAV, published an article in August 2023 detailing the depth of corruption within Russia's military. The state armament program, designed to revitalize the navy to Soviet-era strength, is failing because much of the allocated money is misappropriated. For instance, mere weeks before the sinking of the Moskva in the Black Sea, a Russian naval officer was arrested alongside two contract executives for siphoning 692 million rubles, approximately $7.9 million, from a project intended to upgrade naval missiles between 2012 and 2014. Caravanserai, an overseas news website, reports that the naval officer, Captain First Rank Igor Supranovich, chose an unknown firm for the project, bypassing approved contractors. Valery Klokuk, the director of Viza Public Analytics Center and a political analyst, describes this as a classic Russian scheme. A procurement order is created for a specific person, executed, money is paid from the budget, and then comes the kickback. These issues have plagued the state armament program, which has only managed to deliver about a third of the promised frigates and just a fifth of the corvettes to the Navy. Corruption and bureaucracy have clogged the gears of the Russian naval machine. Money is misspent, maintenance is neglected, and many orders go unfulfilled. All this points to a navy in serious trouble, both in Ukraine and in the future. The days of Russia being a leading naval power may be ending. After all, even having the world's largest navy doesn't mean much if the ships aren't fit for purpose. But what do you think? Are things as bad as they seem for Russia's navy, or will the country turn its situation around with enough time and investment? Will Russia manage to make inroads in the Black Sea, perhaps by convincing Turkey to relinquish its hold on the Turkish Straits? Tell us what you think in the comments below, and thank you for watching. Now, go check out why all Russian weapons are so bad. Or click on this other video instead.